Elephant reunites with best friend after 35 years. You won't believe his reaction. The sound cut through the morning like a memory that refused to stay buried. A single thin note floated across the wide open land of a wildlife sanctuary in northern Georgia. It was quiet there. No crowds. No noise. Just wind, birds, and the slow movement of very large animals. Then everything changed. An elephant standing far across the field froze. His ears lifted high. His body went still. For a moment, it felt like the world stopped with him. Then the 5-ton elephant started to move. At first it was slow, almost unsure. Then faster. Then faster still. The ground shook with every step. Dust rose into the air. Workers nearby panicked, shouting for everyone to move back. But the old man holding the small metal harmonica did not move at all. His hands trembled. Tears ran down his face. He already knew what this meant. 35 years earlier, this same sound had once meant safety, warmth, and love. In 1989, Daniel Harper was 26 years old and fresh out of college. He had taken a job as a junior animal helper at a small zoo in Arizona. It was not his dream job, but it was close enough to animals, and that felt like a start. On his first week, a senior worker asked him to help with a special case. In a side enclosure, away from visitors, stood a baby elephant barely taller than a grown man. His name was Kibbo. He was 2 years old and alone. His herd had been killed during an illegal hunt in East Africa. Rangers found him standing beside his mother, refusing to leave. By the time he arrived at the zoo, he had stopped eating and barely moved. Most workers said he would not survive. Daniel did not see an animal that was broken. He saw a child that was scared. Daniel had grown up in care homes after losing his family when he was young. He knew what silence felt like. He knew what it felt like to be surrounded by people and still feel alone. Without asking for permission, he began sitting near Kibbo every night after work. He did not touch him. He did not talk. He just stayed. Slowly things changed. Kibbo began to step closer. His eyes followed Daniel. One night, he reached out his trunk and touched Daniel's hand. That moment changed both of their lives. Over the next 2 years, Daniel became Kibbo's person. He fed him, cleaned him, walked beside him every day. When Daniel played a cheap harmonica he bought at a gas station, Kibbo swayed gently, ears relaxed, eyes calm. The same song every morning. The same sound. Then the zoo lost funding. Daniel was let go. Kibbo was moved away. They were separated with no warning, no goodbye, and no promise of seeing each other again. And now, after 35 long years, that same sound had reached Kibbo's ears once more. The day Daniel was forced to leave the zoo stayed frozen in his memory. He remembered the heat on the pavement, the smell of dust, and the way his chest felt too tight to breathe. He had been told to pack his things and leave before sunset. There was no meeting, no long explanation. Just a quiet decision made by people who never met Kibbo the way he had. When Daniel walked to the enclosure for the last time, Kibbo was already watching him. The young elephant stood still, his trunk hanging low, his eyes dark and heavy. Animals notice things people think they hide. Kibbo knew something was wrong. Daniel rested his forehead against the fence and stayed there for a long time. He did not cry. He did not speak. He just let Kibbo breathe in his scent the way he always did. When Daniel finally turned to leave, Kibbo made a sound Daniel had never heard before. It was not loud. It was deep and broken. The sound followed Daniel all the way to the parking lot. 2 weeks later, Kibbo was moved again. This time to a large sanctuary in Georgia that cared for elephants who could not live in zoos anymore. Daniel heard about it through a short email. No address. No visiting rules. Just a line saying Kibbo was safe. Daniel tried to move on. Life pushed forward whether he was ready or not. He found work teaching animal science at a community college. He married. He built a quiet life. From the outside, everything looked fine. But some nights, when the world slowed down, he still heard that sound in his head. Still saw the small elephant reaching for him through the fence. He never threw the harmonica away. Years passed. Decades passed. His hair turned gray. His steps grew slower. One winter evening, his wife found the old photo tucked inside a book. It showed a younger Daniel, smiling beside a small elephant with his trunk wrapped clumsily around Daniel's arm. She asked one question. Have you ever tried to find him? That question changed everything. Daniel spent months writing letters and emails. Most went unanswered. Some came back with polite refusals. Finally, one message arrived from a sanctuary manager in Georgia. There was an elephant named Kibbo. He was older now. Scarred. Quiet. He did not allow visitors close. But yes, the timeline matched. They agreed to let Daniel visit under strict rules. The night before the visit, Daniel barely slept. Fear sat heavy in his chest. What if Kibbo did not remember? What if he did and the memory only caused pain? He almost turned back. The next morning he stood at the fence, hands shaking, staring at a massive figure in the distance. Kibbo was no longer small. He was enormous, powerful, and alone. Daniel called his name once. Kibbo did not turn. The silence that followed felt final. Daniel lowered his head, believing the past had stayed buried where it belonged. Daniel stepped away from the fence slowly, his heart heavy but calm in a strange way. He told himself this was enough. He had seen Kibbo alive. That had to be enough. Some stories do not get happy endings. He understood that now. That evening, Daniel sat alone in the small room the sanctuary had arranged for him. The walls were plain. The light was dim. He took off his jacket and felt something hard in the pocket. His fingers closed around cold metal. The harmonica. He had not planned to bring it out. He had not even thought about playing it. But the weight of it in his hand pulled at something deep inside him. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, lifted it slowly, and breathed in. The sound came out weak at first. Then, unsteady. He tried again. Then the melody found its way back like it had been waiting all these years. The same simple tune he used to play every morning. The tune Kibbo knew before he knew safety. The next morning, Daniel returned to the open field early. The air was cool. Mist hung low over the grass. Kibbo stood far away near a line of trees, his body half turned from view. Daniel raised the harmonica. He played. The sound traveled across the open land, soft but clear. 5 seconds passed. Nothing changed. 10 seconds. Then Kibbo stopped walking. His ears lifted. Slowly his head rose. His body turned inch by inch as if pulled by something he did not fully understand. The elephant stood completely still, facing the sound. Daniel kept playing, his hands shaking but steady enough to hold the tune. Kibbo took one step forward. Then another. And then he ran. The ground trembled as the massive elephant moved faster than anyone expected. Workers nearby shouted warnings. Someone yelled Daniel's name. But Daniel did not move. He could not. His legs felt rooted to the earth. Kibbo stopped just a few feet away, dust rising around his legs. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. His eyes searched Daniel's face, wide and unsure. Daniel lowered the harmonica. Kibbo reached out with his trunk. It hovered in the air, shaking slightly, then touched Daniel's hand. Just for a second. Then it pulled back. Daniel did not speak. He did not move. The trunk reached out again. This time it brushed Daniel's arm, his shoulder, his chest. Kibbo let out a low rumble, deep and steady, a sound not of fear but of memory. Then, slowly, the elephant bent his front legs and lowered himself until his head rested against Daniel's chest. The world went quiet. Daniel pressed his hands against Kibbo's warm skin and cried without trying to stop himself. The years between them fell away. There was no fence. No distance. No time. Only recognition. Only home. Around them, people stood frozen, afraid to breathe, watching something none of them would ever forget. After that moment, nothing rushed them. No one tried to pull Daniel away. The workers stayed back, watching in silence as Kibbo slowly stood up again. He did not move away. He stayed close, his trunk resting lightly against Daniel's side, as if making sure he was still real. Over the next few days, the sanctuary allowed Daniel to return each morning. Always under care and safety rules. Always calm. Kibbo waited for him near the same trees every time. He did not run again. He did not need to. He already knew. Daniel played the harmonica each morning. Kibbo swayed gently, his eyes half closed, his ears relaxed. The deep tension that had lived in his body for years slowly faded. The workers noticed changes almost right away. Kibbo ate better. He slept longer. He began making soft sounds they had never heard from him before. One afternoon, a caretaker brought out old paint supplies used for enrichment. A large canvas was placed on the ground. Daniel smiled when he saw it. He dipped a brush in blue paint and held it out carefully. Kibbo hesitated. Then he took it. The first line was rough and wide, but it was steady. Daniel laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from deep inside. They painted together for nearly an hour. No rush. No crowd. Just quiet understanding. But time does not stop, even for moments like these. Daniel knew he could not stay forever. His life was elsewhere. His wife was waiting. The thought of leaving again made his chest ache, but this time was different. This time he had a choice. On his last morning, Daniel came early. The sky was just starting to brighten. Kibbo stood waiting, calm and alert. Daniel played the harmonica one last time, slower than usual, letting each note settle. When he finished, Kibo stepped forward and touched Daniel's chest with his trunk. Not holding. Not pulling. Just touching. Daniel rested his forehead against Kibo's and stayed there, breathing together. He did not feel panic this time. Only peace. When Daniel finally stepped back, Kibo did not cry out. He did not chase. He watched. And that was how Daniel knew. Kibo understood. This was not goodbye forever. It was only see you again. 3 months later, Daniel came back. This time he did not come alone. His life had shifted to make space for what truly mattered. He and his wife moved to a small town not far from the sanctuary. Daniel began volunteering there, slow and steady, never forcing moments, never asking for more than Kibo wanted to give. The reunion was quiet. Kibo did not run. He stood near the trees, ears moving softly, eyes calm. When Daniel stepped closer, Kibo lowered his head and rested it gently against Daniel's chest. No fear. No doubt. Just trust. From that day on, Daniel visited often. Some days they painted. Some days Daniel played the harmonica while Kibo listened. Other days they simply stood together, sharing the space without needing anything else. The workers noticed a change they could not explain with training or care alone. Kibo began spending time near other elephants. He explored more. His body language softened. The elephant who once stood alone now chose connection. Daniel understood why. Love remembered is powerful. Years had passed. Pain had happened. But the bond had stayed alive, quiet and patient, waiting for the right moment to return. Every morning, as the sun rose over the sanctuary, a familiar sound drifted through the air. A simple tune. Easy to follow. Easy to feel. And every morning, a large elephant stood listening, ears relaxed, heart open, knowing that some friendships do not fade with time. They wait. And when they return, they come back stronger than ever.